Today I will talk to you about having sweet blood and how that affects your blood vessels. So up here I put some different kinds of food. Why is it really that we eat? Why do we eat? Energy? It's good, right? It tastes good, so we want to eat. And if we don't eat, we get hungry, so we want to eat. So basically, you need the energy. Your body's telling you you need to eat. So in your body, you have 40,000 billion cells, and they require energy and building blocks in order to function properly. And these foods, they're packed with just that. They have all those nutrients that your body needs. I kind of organized them in 3 different things here. Here, in soda, pasta, banana, and sweets, you have a special kind of nutrient. Can you guess which one that could be? What did you say?
I didn't say anything.
Yeah. Glucose? Yes, that's right. Or more complex kinds of glucose that are carbohydrates. So when you eat them, they're broken down into glucose or sugars. And sugar and glucose, that's a really good thing for your cells to give lots of energy. Here we have butter and an avocado. What type of nutrient do we have in here? Fat, lots of fat. And when fats are broken down, that's also a very good energy source, as well as building block for your cells. Here we have lovely beans and some tuna chunks. What type of nutrient do we have in here, you think? Protein? That's correct. Very good over there. So the protein also is a very important building block for all your cells. And for example, to be able to make muscles, lots of proteins in there. So obviously you have the nutrients here, and your cells, they're all over the body. But how can the nutrients get to all those cells? Do you know? Well, you start eating, right? And then all that food is broken down into smaller and smaller pieces. And in your intestine, that can go out into your blood. And your blood, it's circulating all over. So that your blood, it's kind of circulating in big pipes or tubes. And they need to branch many, 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 many times. So they reach all of those different cells all around your body. So it's really important for your body, and your body works really hard to kind of maintain the nutrients at just the right level. If you don't have enough, well, then your cells don't get enough energy, right? But if you have too much, that can harm the cells. So at any given moment in your blood, you have basically 1 teaspoon of sugar in your blood. It's up to here. So it's quite little, actually, when you consider that your blood, that's maybe 3, 4, or 5 liters of blood. This is it. And then you get hungry. Maybe you have a banana or a portion of pasta without the sauce. So just from having 1 banana or 1 piece of pasta, this is the amount of sugar that's in those type of foods. It's more than actually all the sugar that's circulating at any given time point. If you instead, or also want a soda because you're thirsty, or maybe want a sweet afterwards, guess how much sugar is in those? That's a lot. So you can imagine that if you have this meal, the amount of sugar after that meal would be considered to rise a lot, right? But then your body has to make sure that it needs to clear all that glucose, all that sugar away from the blood vessels into other compartments. And you have several different compartments in your body where that can be stored. What do you think this is? Muscle. Muscle is one place where it can be stored. Then you have an organ that's called the liver. There it can also be stored. And if these are filled already, that excess of sugar in your blood vessels, that's actually converted into fat and is stored as fat on your body, which is quite convenient. Let's say that you want to run, then you have the energy already there in your muscles. It's there, it's very handy. If you haven't had something to eat for a while and your blood sugar starts to decrease a little bit, then the liver can hand out that extra sugar to maintain a good balance. If you would suddenly end up in the wilderness and won't have access to any food for a very long time, well, then you have those fat deposits, and the fat can be converted back into glucose and energy for your cells. So the body has kind of this neat system of keeping the levels just right. And actually how that works is that when blood leaves the blood and needs to enter those muscle, fat, or liver, it cannot just go there. It needs to go through certain gates. And those gates, they are locked. But when the body can sense that glucose level in the blood is they're rising, then they release a hormone called insulin. And insulin is like the key. So it goes right up to that gate, opens the lock, and then that gate is open, so the glucose can flow from the bloodstream into those tissues. But what happens, for example, let's say that suddenly the body cannot produce any insulin. So there are no keys to open those gates, those glucose gates. Or, for example, suddenly those gates require many, many more locks or keys to open those gates. Well, what happens then? Then suddenly you can't get rid of that excess blood glucose. And it's just flowing around in your system. And what is that doing to your body, really? So there is actually a disease that's quite common in the UK. 3.3 million people have it here in the UK. And 500 to 600,000 people in the UK, they have it, but they don't even know that they have it. Can you guess what that disease is? That's correct, diabetes. Very well. So diabetes, that's when you have elevated sugars in your blood. And that disease is increasing. Over the past 20 years or so, the people with diabetes have more than doubled here in the UK. And it's expected that it will continue to rise. In the next 10 years, more than 5 million people are expected to have diabetes. And why is it so dangerous then? Well, it's because not all cells are like the fat cells, muscle cells, and liver cells that can keep their gates locked. Many other cells, they have the gates, but they're open all the time. So if you have lots of sugar in your blood, that will flow right into those cells. So imagine those cells getting maybe twice or even 5 times the amount of sugar that they normally have. How will they feel, you think? Good or bad? Bad, quite bad. So over time, those cells and those organs that are affected, for example, your blood vessels, your kidneys, your nerve cells, they start to, well, disease develops in them. It doesn't happen overnight, rather it happens over years, maybe even 10 years, 20 years. And the person who has diabetes is not maybe noticing it while it's happening. So for example, you have tiny, tiny blood vessels in your eye, and those can be affected by this increased amount of glucose. So maybe you get a little bit of blurred vision, and if you're unlucky, that can even develop into blindness after many years. As many as 1 in 20 people with diabetes become blind on at least one eye. What also happens, for example, is that you can, like if you're walking with a stone in your shoe, when you have diabetes, your nerves might be somewhat damaged, so you can't really feel it. So you keep walking and you get a wound. And since your circulation is not working as well in the foot, it cannot kind of clean it as nicely either. So maybe you don't even notice that you have that wound. until it's been infected. And if that happens, the worst case scenario, which happens basically 1 in 100 diabetics over their lifetime, is that they need to amputate maybe a toe, a foot, or even a leg. So it's not very nice diseases. But the major thing that is kind of killing people with diabetes, that's cardiovascular disease. So do you know what cardiovascular disease is? That's correct. So you have blood vessels, right? And this disease happens in everyone as you age. In diabetes, it goes just a little bit quicker. So let's pretend that this is a blood vessel, and the blood flows through it quite nicely. You see there's lots of space, right? But over time, when that blood vessel is filled with fats, and that fat is kind of hardened, can you see now that it will be a little bit more tricky for the blood to go through, right? That's okay maybe, but the real danger, that's when pieces of this kind of hardened plaque ruptures, or maybe even the whole plaque, and then it starts flowing with the blood. And I'm not sure you know, but the blood vessels will become more and more narrow as they go longer into your body. So let's see here, this is a smaller blood vessel. As the plaque enters here, it hardly fits, so it really clogs the vessel. Do you think any blood can come through this blood vessel? No. So what about all those cells that were supposed to be kind of getting oxygen and nutrients from this blood vessel? They're not feeling so well, are they? And they might even die. And if this would happen in a blood vessel that is part of your heart, that would be a myocardial infarction. If it would be in a blood vessel that's going to your brain, that would be a stroke. So there are many different diseases that diabetics can have, and none of them are really nice. Luckily today, there are medications which can control the blood glucose levels. So that's good, because if your body can't do it, there are medications that can. But there is still much more that can be done, because it's taking away some of the damage of the blood vessels, but not all. So remember, guys, that I told you that these kind of diseases, they're developing over a very, very long time, maybe 10 to 20 years. And they're processes that are happening in the blood vessel or the tissue that they support. So what if we can understand exactly what's happening during that time and try to find treatments for the disease that is actually going on in the vessel wall, and not just focus on the blood glucose levels that's circulating in your blood. So that's something that research is doing right now. Thank you very much for listening.